lives today. So with that, Adam, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Adam Lane Smith. I'm the attachment specialist. Most people at this point say, what the heck is an attachment specialist? I was a licensed marriage and family therapist for many years before I studied attachment theory and really got deep into it. I discovered it was the core concept and the core reason behind many mental health issues that we deal with here in this country. Many of the diagnoses that we work on, that many mental health professionals have no idea what the root cause is. We sort of just medicate it, and then we give you therapy for the rest of your life, and it costs you tens of thousands of dollars and 20 years of time. They do not really teach them the underlying cause of that, which is attachment theory. I specialize now into that. I coach people all over the world on how to do that. And that is my passion. That is my heart and soul. And that is how I help families come back from the brink of divorce, from total destruction, from kids being alienated from their parents, from people crushed under depression, and just about every bad thing you can imagine in modern life. It usually comes back to attachment is at the root of it. And when you fix the attachment, you allow that person to open up and learn all kinds of new skills and use new tactics in their life that builds more loving relationships.
Do you have things you can offer people that are in, let's say, good, solid marriages, but there's places that they'd like to improve, communication, intimacy, things of that nature?
Oh, absolutely. So, one big specialty I have nowadays is teaching men how women communicate and how emotional intimacy builds every part of the marriage. How, if you're looking for more physical intimacy in the bedroom, it should start with the emotional intimacy between the two of you. One big thing that men struggle with, right, is feeling vulnerable. They don't want to be vulnerable, but their wife is constantly nagging them to try to be vulnerable. What does it mean to open up to your wife? What does it mean to open up without feeling pathetic? How do you open up in the correct ways so that she will respect you more, but also feel closer to you while maintaining your manhood? That is one big thing that I teach to a lot of men. Men learn that, you actually learn how to build a loving relationship for the rest of your life.
And my experience has been that, I've been married for 20 years now. My wife and I have 9 kids, and our marriage, I would say, has always gotten better every year. But there's certain things that I don't think I ever understood about my wife or marriage, really, until I found your materials. So I'm really excited about the prospects of learning more about ourselves.
Mhm.
And so one question that I have for you then is for the man, let's just talk about the men first of all. What are some things that you think men that are in marriages want to make their marriages better, or repair really troubled marriages? What are some things that you would recommend that they do to start that process of becoming more vulnerable, more communicative, and doing the things that will increase intimacy?
So I wrote a book called Exhausted Wives, Bewildered Husbands. It's right up here above my head on that bookshelf behind you. That book talks about the biggest reason for divorce that I saw in the vast majority of divorces that I worked on when I was a licensed marriage and family therapist. One of the biggest pieces is wives who start off with attachment issues themselves, right? Attachment is the way we connect to other people to give and receive love. We're supposed to learn it in childhood. Our parents are supposed to teach us that we can openly ask for our needs. We can trust others. We will cooperate with others. They will cooperate with us. They will care for us. They will be honest with us. That everything is calm and low stress and low drama, and that problems are easy to solve when you work together. That's what parents are supposed to teach you to give you secure attachment. Many of us do not have that. The research shows that about 65% of adults here in the West do not have secure attachment. We have broken attachment. We have insecure attachment, and it can break in a number of different ways. But the research shows that one of the biggest issues, and my experience shows one of the biggest issues that leads to divorce is a wife who is eager to please, who's very approval seeking, and a husband who's what we would call avoidant attachment style, who is more distant, more emotionally shut down, who is closed off from that connection. He doesn't trust other people to open up to them. He doesn't trust them to care for him. He believes others are going to betray him. He feels like he has to do everything himself. So the couple ends up solving problems around each other instead of with each other. This leads to a lot of disdain. It leads to a lot of pushing back and resentment. And when they have children, over time, because the husband's not able to bond very effectively. He doesn't know how to open up and build that connection. He also doesn't know how to give that affection to his children as well to build secure attachment in them. The wife will be flooded with all kinds of bonding hormones at birth and breastfeeding. So she connects to the kids and partially fixes some of her attachment issues, just enough to now see that the kids are getting anxious and not feeling connected to their father. She begins to blame the father. She begins to push back on him and blame him for everything that goes wrong in the children and in the family. He gets resentful because he has never changed. He's who he has always been. And suddenly she's attacking him and he's being treated like a threat. And this starts to really dissolve the marriage over many, many years. So when I see a lot of couples who divorce at 15 or 20 years, it's usually this process. The long-term married divorces usually follow this pattern right here. So husbands who want to avoid that absolutely need to examine the way that they connect to other human beings, the way that they solve problems, the way that they trust people or don't, the belief that everyone on earth is going to betray you, or the obsession with your earning other people's approval, with your insecurities, your belief that you can never be open to another human being or you're going to get betrayed or abandoned. You must examine those pieces. That makes you a weak leader. It makes you the weak link. It makes everybody else stressed out and nobody can trust you. If you fix that, it makes you an incredible leader. And that right there is exactly the role of a father in the family, to lead. If you cannot do that, it's not going to work. Your family will break.
Is one of those, you said anxious and avoidant attachments, is one tend to be skewed more towards women and one towards men, or?
You've got it. So men and women each can be either of those. Anxious attachment is the belief there's something wrong with you on the inside that everyone else can see. And if they see it, if you open up, they are going to discover that you're an imposter. They will turn on you, they will abandon you, and rightly they will leave you alone and you will never be loved again. So you have to earn approval from other people and endlessly try to get people to like you against the day that you are revealed as an imposter. It's constant imposter syndrome. Avoidant attachment style is the belief that there's something wrong with everybody else, that they are incapable of acting in good faith, that they are going to hurt people, they're going to attack people, they're going to take things from people, that everybody else is a bleak, awful person, and that you have to manage them to get your needs met. So you have to stay safe inside yourself and manage everybody around you for life. And that's the only way to get your needs met. Men tend to skew toward avoidant and run away. Women tend to skew toward anxious and try to seek approval and earn approval from people. But there's plenty of guys, nice guy syndrome. You've heard plenty about that. That is men with anxious attachment style. But when you see women who are out there in hookup culture, maybe they brag about how they've never had an orgasm ever, and they've been with 30 men just in the last month. That's usually avoidant attachment style. The women who absolutely resist any kind of bonding at all, those are usually more avoidantly attached women. Those two extremes really stand out because they're a perversion of the masculine and the feminine really hard.
Are we all messed up somehow, or is there a normal or healthy attachment?
There is. It's
Okay.
called secure attachment. It's nice. It's right in the middle. You only 35% of adults are shown to actually have this anymore. It's got worse and worse and worse. I've charted it out over the last 100 years. It has grown worse and worse as things have broken. Supposed to have 5 different safety nets throughout society that protect our attachment and our connection and bonding. All 5 safety nets have utterly broken over the last 100 years, worse and worse till where we are today now. Secure attachment, though, is other people are generally okay. Other people will work with me. Other people will solve problems together with me. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. It's not that everyone is perfect or that I'm perfect, but we're all going to get along and everyone is generally going to work okay together. Let's just solve our problems. Let's be clear about what we want. And let's just live our life together with low stress, low drama. Wouldn't that be nice? That's secure attachment. And they go through life like that. They have very low stress levels. They usually resist pretty much any mental health diagnoses that may impact them. They have more resilience with trauma, so that they don't generally get post-traumatic stress disorder. If they face a trauma, they're able to adapt through it. They have a great support network. Their family has cultivated good connection together. These are the people that you meet who just seem to have everything together. It's really secure attachment is what that is.
And if people are sort of skewed one way or another, either towards anxious or avoidant, is this all a relatively a childhood phenomenon, or can it develop later in life from trauma?
It starts developing the very first day you're born, and it begins from there. And you develop it over your entire childhood, and it can shift, it can grow, it can adapt. You can become secure with careful work. You can become less secure. You can get a cross blend of the two if you get really badly damaged with trauma. You could go from secure and have horrendous trauma that breaks through all the good things that you have built that could then develop some avoidant features. I've seen that plenty of times. One of my specialties as a psychotherapist was extreme traumas. That was one way that I did a lot of work with people. Yes, absolutely. Your attachment style can and will change over the course of your life due to experience. You can use that to go from bad to good, but once in a while I do see it get worse.
So we had a question, we let our listeners know that we were bringing you on, and one of the questions that came
Mhm,
up was, if someone is in a marriage and they believe their spouse has some of these attachment issues, but
mhm,
spouse may not be aware of that,
mhm.
what do you recommend that they do to introduce these concepts to their spouses, either to you or your materials? Because until they seem to be
Mhm.
receptive to the idea, you can only change yourself, right?
Mhm. Mhm. So the worst that you could possibly do is say, "Hey, watch this video. I think you're screwed up and this guy will fix you." And that's exactly what we're trying to avoid.
Right.
That is the worst possible way to present this information. "Hey, I think you're messed up and can you watch this so that you can be slightly less awful?" And that is, even if you don't say it that way, that often is the way somebody with attachment issues will perceive it. They will perceive it as an attack, they'll perceive it as a criticism. So, what I recommend most often is this: "Hi there, spouse. You know me best, and I think I am dealing with some issues. Found this video that seems to explain some pieces of my life and my relationships, and I'd really value your feedback on it. Would you be comfortable watching this with me and just telling me if you see any of these pieces in me?" That's usually the best way to approach it. It's complimentary, it's kind, it lowers their defenses. None of it is dishonest. It's not untrue because this is part of your life and it does affect you. And you are getting their feedback about you. If your partner has even the slightest level of insight or intelligence, they are likely going to say, "Huh, this kind of explains some about me too." And then you say, "Really? Interesting. Okay, well, why don't we watch some more of this guy's material?" So this is why I've produced over 300 YouTube videos now at this point on my YouTube channel. There's any number of topics you can pull in. I have male depression. "Hey, sweetheart, do you think this could be like your brother is dealing? Like, could he be dealing with these attachment issues that are leading to male depression?" Well, and she watches it. "Well, maybe, and maybe I am too. This guy said on here that families deal with it. Maybe it's me too." "Really?" And you can have that discussion, and it opens the door for all kinds of things. Parenting videos, bonding videos. I have how to have more sex with your spouse videos. I have everything on there. "Hey, sweetheart, do you think this could work? Like this guy's teaching me to be more open to you. Do you think this would be helpful?" "Well, maybe." And you watch it together and she gives you yes or no. And then you said, "Hey, I found some other videos from this guy. Would you be comfortable watching some additional videos from him?" "Yeah, maybe." So you sit down, you pick out a couple videos off my playlist and you start building a playlist of your own to watch a couple with her, and you sneak one in there that's about attachment styles and maybe men and women dealing with attachment issues. And you can watch that together. It's not about being dishonest, it's about presenting it in a disarming manner, in a way that is not lying, but totally disarming so that they are able to receive the information without feeling threatened. That is by far the best way to work this sort of thing in. The second best way that must go with it is for you, the spouse, the husband, whoever it may be, to do your own work, right? Do your own work and then become the light on the hill where you model for them what a more loving and more secure relationship should look like. You stop the fighting completely, you stop the game playing, and you start saying, "This is who I'm going to be from now on because I want to be this person, and you deserve this person, and our children deserve this person, and this is simply who I'm going to be. You will see a change in me over time." The only time I've seen this go wrong is when the wife or the spouse has a horrible personality disorder and reacts terribly over time. But by and large, it goes very, very well. The wife will usually resist at first and sometimes get worse at first because you're getting her hopes up and that scares her. And then over time, if your changes are consistent and internally driven, she usually will change and adapt with you. The research shows that 97% of wives, if their husband converts to a new religion, she converts to a new religion as well. 97%. Women are very reactive to the men in their life. And that generally is why they develop attachment issues, is because they're reacting to the men in their lives in the past. And then they react to the men in their lives presently as well. So building that into yourself and then introducing it in a non-threatening manner is exactly the method for getting this into your home and making sure that you guys can change together.
I just had a question about, you mentioned the typical behavior as far as the husband being in an avoidance kind of state. What should a husband do, to improve that situation? Is it something where they should engage more, even though, how do you fix that as far as the avoidance behavior?
So avoidant behavior stems from the belief that nobody else is ever going to act with morals or honor when their stress level is up. That is what avoidant attachment style stems from. It stems from growing up in a family and watching everyone else hurt each other and be crazy. That's generally speaking where avoidant behavior comes from. You must therefore seek out several people. The number seems to be about three people in your life that you respect and you believe they are reasonably decent human beings. These can be siblings, if you have good siblings. They can be friends. One of them could be your spouse. You choose to open up to that person and you out yourself as having been a person. You have what I call the I'm an anxious person speech, right? You out yourself as an anxious person. You may not know this about me, but you probably do. I tend to be anxious. I tend to have a hard time opening up and trusting people. And I feel like if I ever do, it's going to be used against me or something bad is going to happen. I hate this. I don't ever want to do this again. So I'm choosing right now to trust you because you are a person in my life who has good moral behavior and you are an honorable person. And I want to be closer to you and I want to fix me. So please, if you see me closing off again, please call me on it. I do not want to do that anymore. You get their help. You give them your poker tells, you tell them what's going on, you reveal yourself, and then you see if they are going to shoot you because you did it. You see if they're going to set you on fire or throw rocks at you. Probably they are going to love you. And then you do this and make a practice of being more consistently open and honest and transparent. And then you learn how to share your needs in a way that is simply saying, hey, I could really use this help. Could you help me with this? Hey, I really want this. Is this okay? Hey, can we do that? Learning to simply ask on the surface like you should have been trained where you were 3 years old. You should have been trained to be able to ask for your needs. And your dad would say, yeah, okay, I'll take care of that. Or, hey, you know what? I can't give that to you right now. Here's the condition under which I could give that to you. Or, hey, you know what? That's not going to be good for you. Here's something that's better for you. Let's do this for you. Being able to get your needs met that transparently, you must reprogram that into you. As you do that with 2 to 3 people in your life, it shifts your brain and transforms you back to a place where you should have been all along. What is your natural biological state, which is secure attachment. As you do this, you will be more open and honest and trusting and loving with your wife and with your children, and it will change your relationships with them. Very often, they tend to reflect you very quickly. And as you change, they begin to heal. That is really husbands are the avenue to healing in the home. If I can get a hold of a husband and get him to believe that it's possible to change and he starts, it is incredible the amount of healing that ripples through the entire family from the head down.
I assume that works both ways. So if the husband's a mess, that probably really permeates the marriage too, as well.
Very, very, very hard. If the husband refuses to do the work, it is very hard. Usually the mom picks up the work, starts working with the kids, and then forms a coalition against him. And they usually start viewing him as a cancer in the family, and then they gradually move to remove the cancer from the family. Is usually how that ends up going on. Like I said, that's one of the biggest causes for divorce right there.
Since these attachments form in childhood, how should we raise our kids?
Big question, but here's the biggest answer that I give. You must build what's called a self-correcting family system. You train your children, not that they have to be perfect or that you're going to be perfect, because you never will, but you're going to make mistakes. But when you make a mistake, you train your children to be able to come to you and tell you you have made a mistake and seek your apology. You do this by apologizing when you make mistakes. You do this by disciplining them, but explaining the context of the discipline. You do this by giving full context to everybody so nobody misunderstands anything. And you give them full permission to talk with you openly about challenges. You don't give them permission to disrespect you or overwhelm you or usurp your control as the head of the household, but you become a servant leader in your home and you listen to them and explain to them and guide them in a way that shows them that this family system will take care of them. They can speak up and they can become self-correcting. The family itself will then self-correct around any mistakes that you make. And that itself is the heart of secure attachment. Secure attachment is not perfect. It is loving, it is transparent, and it is trusting. That is how you must build your family.
I was listening to a different podcast, I think it was yesterday, and it was a lady. She has a podcast and she brought on a guy that sounded similar to you, but if I took away, she said historically, it's sort of been the relationship has kind of gone through the wife. It's sort of, the tone has been set
Mhm.
by the women by and large, but for whatever reason, recently, there's been a resurgence of men. I mean, look at this show. This is two guys, this is two average guys, husbands and fathers, started this podcast because were we had started talking before we ever started this podcast and realized that we had a lot of things that we were each dealing with, but never really talk about. And we wanted to share that with other people. We're trying to improve our marriages. Is that a phenomenon you're seeing, or are we that strange?
No, no, here has been the problem is World War One wiped out a generation of men across the world. It wiped them out. Russia is still dealing with the monumental number of men that were lost in World War One. America got a lot of it. Europe got a lot of it. The ones who survived came back and were called the lost generation. It was so brutal that it destroyed them. We had the Roaring Twenties where people just drove themselves into hedonism to try to escape from the pain. We had the rise of credit. We had all kinds of things just to escape from the pain of that lost generation and losing so many men. The family, the transition, the hand down from father to son of wisdom, of knowledge, of leadership, of guidance, of manhood, devastated, absolutely devastated. Then you had the Great Depression. You had the Dust Bowl. You had everything that came after that when everything collapsed. And for the first time in history, more Americans lived in cities than in rural environments. You lost family farms. You lost extended family networks. You had fathers working 16 to 18-hour shifts every day, 6 or 7 days a week. You had families crammed into apartments or into cities where they had very little connection. You had only the women, one woman at home. Then very quickly it fell apart. Then World War II, another meat grinder, another devastation of men just lost in monumental amounts all over the world. And then you had the baby boomer generation who came next, of one mom alone raising the kids, dad gone constantly. And dad was either the greatest generation or the silent generation, where they hardly spoke about anything. And they had been through all these catastrophes. And their idea of loving their children was silent martyrdom, of just doing nothing but keeping your head down, slaving away, and feeding your children. That was their way to show love. Some baby boomers got it, some did not. The ones who did not tore an absolute hole through the fabric of humanity, of families, of society, everything. You had an explosion of rebellion, of screw you. If you don't love me, then I don't love you. I don't need you in my life. Get away from me. We had the rise of cars and dating and casual sex. All kinds of things exploded from this. We saw that this was the first real fracturing of attachment in an entire generation. And the baby boomers right now are still tripling the divorce rates in their 70s and 80s, tripling the average divorce rate on record right now, still. Imagine getting divorced in your 80s, as if you have much time left to go find a new spouse. Not much hope there, but they're still doing it. This right here, they gave birth to the Generation Y, Generation X, right? Who sat there like deer in the headlights because they had no idea what to do. They were raised with very little connection to anybody, very broken attachment. And all they did was sit there while the boomer parents yelled at them, do this, do that, do that. Why are you just standing there? What are you doing? And they were freaking out. Then the boomers got divorced and they went on and raised a second crop of children, the millennials, and said, all right, we're not raising weak kids like the Generation X, Generation Y kids. We're raising tough kids. They'll be like us. And they raised the millennials, who absolutely hate them. Now, the millennials were born into a world absolutely devoid of extended family connections, huge divorce rates. They're used to brokenness. They have never seen a functional world or a functioning family system, the majority of them. All they know is that they hate the people who seem to be holding them down, the millennials. This is why millennials and boomers just absolutely will murder each other anytime they can get the chance, pretty much. And it is, we will make an exact copy of ourselves. Oh no, what have we done? Why are they acting this way? In a worse world. Then you have Generation Z coming along right now. And I think Generation Alpha is the new one that's been rolling out.
Mhm.
What they're actually finding is that Generation Alpha, in the last few years, the pediatricians are sounding the alarm because the suicide rates among 11-year-old boys is skyrocketing more than anything they've ever seen. And they're hardly able to account for it. It's just overwhelming. 11, 12, and 13-year-old boys are killing themselves at astronomically high rates. And men have been gone for a long time. We lost the male to male transition of knowledge, of wisdom, of guidance. of leadership. We lost so much of that. Men nowadays are born into a world where we are expected to be solitary, enclosed units. The male brain goes to the back to observe and forward to act. We need data and information there to give us those solutions. And we are supposed to be able to connect to other men, like data nodes or computers, to be able to download solutions from other men who face that problem and overcame it. That's what we're supposed to be able to do, from fathers, from uncles, from grandfathers, from cousins. Other men give us solutions and then we apply them. It's supposed to be a collected base of knowledge that men carry and pass down. We have utterly lost that. Now men are coming into this world saying, I have to figure out everything all alone. And if I can't, I'm a failure. And we reach a point where we simply can't proceed on our own. So then we get depressed. We feel helpless. Then we feel hopeless that it will ever get better and we become suicidal. Meanwhile, we are trying to carry our family on our back and they seem to be growing more and more resentful toward us. No, this is not an isolated phenomenon. This is the existence of men here in the West. It is being slowly worked on in 100 different areas. You guys are one of those. There's a lot of men trying to fix this, but so far there has been no concerted push in the what's so-called manosphere. There's been no one concerted push, no one leader who's been able to unite. Partly because we have people like various people in the red pill communities that tell us it's okay to feel scared and angry. That's good. Push back on everybody. Women are just here for your pleasure. They're awful anyway. And just have fun, enjoy the collapse, and just sort of here's how to be hedonistic. And that's what they guide us to, is this caricature of manhood that is not manhood at all. It is prolonged boyhood with a big body. That's all that is. And that is not the way to go. So we are slowly seeing the rise of real men, the rise of real fathers, people pushing back, people spreading this message. Like you said, you had found my message and it was overwhelming to see somebody else talking about it. Now you're running a podcast like this. It's going to be overwhelming for your audience to hear the fact that this is being spoken about at all. Men only whisper about this when they have heard it so many times. Then they come to you and they in the dark and whisper to you, thank you. I didn't know anyone else was feeling this way. That's why it's absolutely important we spread this message. No, you're not alone, but you're doing good work.
So I'm curious then, so let's talk about the middle-aged guy like me. I've managed to keep my wife happy enough with me for 20 years to still be married and still making babies. We have an 8-month-old baby at home, but you know, I want to make our marriage as good as it possibly can. I also have kids. My oldest son is already out of the house. He's in the military, so thank goodness he won't be hopefully getting married anytime soon, but I got kids that are up and coming. If you could suggest a plan of guys like me, do you think we should come on and start improving ourselves first and then come back with our spouses? Do you think this is something that we're best off coming in a couples program that I assume you have all of the above combinations, but
I do. Here is the challenge. Is when a man has been with his wife for quite some time, they have heard us start and stop so many programs that it begins to burn out their ability to believe in us if we haven't changed yet. That is the biggest thing I bang my head against with when I work with married men. Is I want to change and I want my wife to see it and I want my wife to acknowledge it immediately and I want her to become so wildly sexually passionate toward me on day 2 that it proves everything about me and I feel totally validated, get all my needs met. And it is not going to work because typically they have built up a wall of resentment and they are actively shutting down any scrap of hope they can ever build in themselves or that you could inspire in them because they have burned out on hope. They have burned out on hope and they're usually just sitting there saying, sure, right, things are going to get better. So the best thing you can do is start the process and improve yourself. Over time, when you have a first level of changes to report to her, go to her and say, hey, just a heads up, I've been trying this new thing. It seems to be bearing fruit. I know you've heard me say this many times before, but I am going to be doing this program and I'm actually sticking with it. And here's what I've seen so far. Here's what I intend to do just to keep you totally updated. I do not expect you to believe it quite yet, but just keeping you updated. Here's where we're at. And she'll say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm just so, and you say, yeah, hey, that's okay. This is right here is the very first test. I'll believe it when I see it. Guys freak out at this point. They treat it like a threat. They say, why? Why can't you just believe in me? What? And that right there tells her you're only changing to try to get good feelings from her. And that right there is the first landmine. Don't step on that one. Say, okay, yeah, you will. You'll see the changes. That's all good. Take your time learning to trust me again. Totally fine. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. That is the best thing you could possibly do. As you continue making your changes, she will get worse, most likely, because you're getting her hopes up and it scares her to death. Do not try to grow your relationship with your wife if she doesn't like how you parent your kids. If she thinks that you are the reason they're anxious, if she thinks that you are a threat to the kids, do not try to improve your relationship with her first. She will hate you. She will attack you. Improve relationships with the kids first and build more emotionally intimate relationships with your children, where you explain to them the context of what you're doing and why, and you help them understand that none of your previous emotionally disconnected behaviors have ever been their fault. So you relieve any ongoing attachment feelings they have, any insecurities they have, any feelings of unworthiness that they have, any approval seeking that they have. You begin healing your children first. They become agents of change in the family, but they also become your billboards for how you have actually changed. Your wife will see them healing and improving and growing, and she will see you as a wonderful asset in her family. And instead of a threat to her children, you become the healer and leader of her children. That itself will soften her heart, and that is the only time she will really begin to believe in you. That is it. If you do that, that changes the entire game.
So I have 5 boys and 4 girls. Is there a is there a different game plan for me working on these relationships with my sons versus my daughters?
Not really. It's the same conversations. It's the same discussions about, here's what I've learned about me. Do you ever have these feelings too? Here's what I've learned about me. I have these insecurities. I have these difficulties. These are some of the thoughts I've had. This is the imposter syndrome I've felt that I've had. This is me being scared to open up and trust other people. This is me having never learned how to get close to somebody anyway. I didn't even know I was missing something with you guys before. This is how I am. Have you ever felt this way before? Doing it that way opens the door for your kids to reveal some of that to you as well. They may say no on the spot, even though they really mean yes. They may say no because they're scared, petrified of revealing weakness to you because they're afraid you'll abandon them or chastise them for it. But you open up and connect with them and begin having those conversations. And as you become more, I don't want to say softer, but gentler with your family, as you become more of that servant leadership does not work unless you are open, transparent, and honest. If you're trying to be a servant leader who is closed off and secretive, you just look like a tyrant waiting to happen. That's all you look like. So a servant leader who is open, transparent, and honest with his family and builds them up instead of criticizing them, that man is worthy of trust, and that man brings the best out in his kids. Then they can soften toward you and explain their insecurities, reveal them, and you can give them full love and acceptance, which heals the attachment issue at its root. That is the best thing. The only thing you have to keep track of is the child's age, which you just age up or age down the language that you're going to use explaining these things. I do also have a video course called the Attachment Bootcamp on my website, adamlanesmith.com. A lot of parents, when they're fixing their attachment, will watch that video course with their teens, and their teens can pick it up because you can pause after each video. There's 13 videos, and you pause after each one and have a discussion about what you just learned. You go first, revealing how that video actually opened up part of you and you realized it. As you're doing that, you're providing them context for the way you have acted. And that itself provides healing for them, because then they can depersonalize your behaviors toward them in the past and not blame themselves or not withdraw as hard. They can learn to trust you and learn to not take you so personally. That can heal them as well. So a lot of tactics here, a lot of options, a lot of ways to do this, but it really, there's no substitute for the honesty. What was that? There's a famous saying somebody said. What was it? The truth shall set you free. I've heard that before somewhere. And it happens to be the case here. The truth here, the absolute truth here, is what sets you free. Only telling the truth will bring you freedom.
One of the things that frightens me the most about this process is I wish I had you in my life 5 or 10 years ago, or this stuff. Strange story. Probably 8-10 years ago, I was just confused about trying to figure some of this stuff out. And I went out and the only thing I could find was I found a Catholic marriage counselor, and I literally snuck out of the house to do this counseling. And I didn't tell my wife, because what I was afraid of is if I told her that, she would feel this was somehow a reflection on her. And I really just wanted to work on myself.
Yeah.
And it did. I got a lot of improvement out of that, but that was more therapy, I really am really excited at what you have and the coaching and being proactive. And I see my kids. I'm a little worried that I've screwed up my older kids enough that there's no fixing them, but we'll see.
If they still talk to you,
Okay.
then there's a chance.
All right.
And the chance is this. Every child who has attachment issues overwhelmingly craves to be connected to their parents, and they don't believe it's possible. If you can do enough of your work to open up to your child and explain your behaviors and explain your mistakes and explain your hurts and your fears and help them in that kind of way without getting defensive when they poke back, without criticizing them, without, you have to be able to do it without that piece. But if you can give them that, it is one of the best, most miraculous gifts they will ever receive, because they have given up that it was possible and you have shown them a miracle. So if their children still speak to you, there is absolutely a chance, and you have an overwhelming amount of leverage that you can't even begin to measure.
Well, I'm going to check out your courses then. I'm really curious about that. And I kind of going back to an earlier thing, it seems to me that this might be a really good way to introduce these concepts, for men to introduce these concepts to their wives by saying, hey, I'd like to work on this with our kids.
Yeah.
You should do that anyway. You should want to do that to improve your relationship with your kids and
Yes.
improve them. But I suspect as a sort of an added benefit of that, your spouse may be open to these things. So
It's fascinating how many teenage boys and young adult boys do take to this information when it's told to them in a scientific manner that makes sense. It's not all about feelings and crying. But one of the biggest assets I do see is, you had asked about the difference between sons and daughters. If you get your daughters involved and you get them aligned in this, they actually become enormous help in healing the family and going to other family members and being proactive in spreading this. I always say that men build structures. We build the outsides, we build the home, but women fill that home. They fill the structures with network, with bonding, with connection, with nurturing. They make the home, the house into a home, so to speak, right? We've all heard that before. If you get the women in your household involved in healthy attachment, they can begin coaxing all of the men in the household to do the same, and they can begin doing it rather than you doing it alone. Get one of the women involved, form a healthy, loving alliance, and then work on that together, and she will become more powerful than you are at changing the hearts of the other family members. That can be really helpful. So if you have a teenage daughter, this is a great opportunity to get her involved and work with her collaboratively. And the two of you will actually bond as you do this process as well. So teenage daughters are, they can be a godsend when it comes to fixing your family.
well, is there anything else, Jonah, about this before I move on? Because I got a segue to something else based on
Go
that.
for it.
So I have a teenage daughter who's graduating high school, and she's exploring her next options and has expressed some interest in doing psychology and therapy. I'm really intrigued about your story where you kind of went up the conventional way, got licensed, and then found that there was so many barriers to doing the type of work you wanted to do that you kind of walked away from that, and you're kind of doing things unlicensed now. I'm really curious about that, and I want to ask you, do you have suggestions for people that want to follow in your footsteps and help fill this space? What recommendations would you have for someone that's in high school or early college that might be able to help in this area?
So people ask me that a lot. I will warn them that my life path just so far has taken 15 years. It is 6 years to get your master's degree in psychology and an additional 3 years to get your license. So it's 6 years of schooling and then 3 years of supervised apprenticeship under other clinicians. I had to accrue 4,000 worked hours under other clinicians with an additional something like $16,000 paid out of pocket for paid supervision. That's that apprenticeship piece. In addition, you had to pass multiple tests, both the national exam plus the state exam. Every state has different licensure procedures. There's typically three different psychology licenses, and that's if you choose to stop at the master's level and become a therapist versus being a testing, a PhD kind of person, or a split MD with the med providers, things like that. Unfortunately, therapy, you will often cap out on your income pretty quick. It's kind of hard to support an entire family on a therapist's salary, generally speaking, unless you go into private practice. Then you're going to be working twice as many hours because you have to run a business and do therapy on the side. The business itself won't pay much. Usually it's free unpaid work on the side for all the paperwork and everything goes into it. So most therapists join a clinic, and then the clinic will take about 50% of your income for the privilege of doing all your paperwork for you, is what will happen. So it's hard to do that 9 years, and then you won't really be able to support a family. Plus, you'll be buried under student loan debt. I did all of that. And then they told me I wasn't able to teach online because any teaching or coaching would be treated as therapy. Therapy was kept to be only within that one state, and I could only work on diagnoses. And I gave up my right to work on diagnoses so that I could coach internationally. What I tell people is this: if you want to help someone, fix your problems. Keep track of the way you fixed your problems. Then find other people who have those problems and show them the way you fixed those problems. If you can turn your method into a method that generalizes to more people, even a population of people that are similar to yourself, that itself is helpful. That itself is a great way forward for fixing your problems and then mapping it out for other people. That is how humans hand down knowledge. That is how we are designed to help each other anyway. Become a specialist in fixing the problems you have fixed. That is the best way forward to help people.
How did you decide to specialize in attachment? Like, did the light bulb just go off one day and you realize this is the root of it all?
It was. I read several books from a few fringe weirdos who were talking about attachment. And through graduate school, what they told us was attachment theory doesn't matter because there's no diagnoses around it. It only works for kids. Don't worry about attachment theory if you're not working with little babies. The only thing you have to know is personality disorders for adults or conduct disorders for teens, and otherwise disregard attachment theory completely. That was what they told us. And what I've learned going around talking with other clinicians in America and Canada and Europe is that's generally what they teach at pretty much every graduate school for most therapists at the master's degree level. That is what everybody hears, is attachment theory doesn't matter because there's very few adult diagnoses around it, except for the extreme personality disorders. So we teach to the book. There's the purple book right there, the DSM-5 of Diagnostic Statistics Manual. That is crap. I don't agree with that. That is what we call the medical model. Most therapists will say, well, we don't know why mental health problems happen. It's kind of a mystery why people develop them, but we work on them. Hopefully we solve them. If we can't, it's lifelong management, and medication can be helpful to manage the ups and downs because it's probably just going to never go away because it's a chemical imbalance you have in your head. We don't really know why. Again, we're just kind of like, whatever, we're shooting in the dark. And that's the medical system. I teach what's called a response system. You are responding to your environment through attachment, and then you grow. Once you are broken at the core and cannot form loving human relationships, you become petrified, you become scared, you go out into the world terrified, you develop what's called generalized anxiety disorder. It gets worse in your teenage years because now you're afraid it's never going to get better. You start developing helplessness and hopelessness, depression, teenage depression. Hey, there's that thing. It starts coming in. That's why it's getting worse nowadays. It's almost always where teenage depression comes from, is broken attachment issues. It can grow into panic attacks. It can grow with trauma, with PTSD. It can also grow up into borderline personality disorder, of course, but it can also grow into bipolar disorder, where your brain says, I can't handle the constant stress and the pressures of trying to be perfect all the time. So it shuts off and it floods your brain with a certain chemical cocktail that creates manic episodes or hypomanic episodes. I've worked extensively with bipolar disorder, both type 1 and type 2, and I've helped people come down from that and have almost no manic symptoms anymore after that, through my years as a psychotherapist before I retired. It really is the heart and soul of all of it. I had attachment issues myself. I went through school, I fixed it. Then I went through school to figure out what I had done, and no one would teach me because attachment theory was disregarded. I had to study extensively what fringe weirdos were doing and then bring that into the limelight and teach it online. And then I said, nobody else is really teaching this to the extent that I want to. Everything else is very clinical, or they're telling people that they're not able to fix it. You're just going to suffer with this for the rest of your life. So I said, no, I'm going to teach this. I'm going to make this the core of my experience. So we don't really have specialized therapy systems like doctors, right? You can go to a foot doctor. You can't really go to an attachment therapist as much. We don't really have that. Not saying that someone couldn't create that, but I am creating this specialty because we need it. We absolutely need this in the world. And this is my passion. This is my life's work.
Well, it looks like you have quite a few years ahead of you. You must be maybe a little younger than me. I'm 45, but I hope you're doing this for quite some time. What's the best way for people to find you and your materials? And I'll link to them below, but
Thank you. My website is adamlanesmith.com. That's lane like road, adamlanesmith.com. You can't be Adam Smith on Amazon and sell books. It's an old dead Scottish economer. It just ain't going to work. adamlanesmith.com. I've got my attachment boot camp course on there. I've also got my coaching one-on-one. I've got my books. I have books on Amazon, Slaying Your Fear right there above my head, Slaying Your Fear on Amazon. I am also on YouTube. If you look up Adam Lane Smith there, I am pretty much on every single platform at this point. So you can find me anywhere you type in Adam Lane Smith. You're going to find a ton of information about psychology and relationships.
killing it on TikTok, by the way.
And TikTok, yes. Thank you. Yeah, that's a big one too.
So, all right. Well, this has been very helpful. Is there anything else that I haven't given you a chance to get out today that relates to this stuff that you think might be helpful to our viewers, guys like us that are looking to help themselves or their marriages or their relationships with their kids?
Absolutely. Don't let the world lie to you and say that you cannot get better. It is just that you haven't found the solution because you haven't connected to the right person to give you the right data you need to solve your problem. If you are in pain, we were given pain receptors to tell us that we are in a bad state that is harmful to us, which means there's a good state where you will not have that pain. Learn the solution, get to that better state, and you will be in the place that you were supposed to be.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Adam. I really, really enjoyed this. I've been looking forward to this. I'm going to play the outro and then I'm going to stop recording. If you got just a minute, I want to chat with you before we.
Sure. I got to
Send
get
you
going
off.
pretty quick, but yes, I do.
Okay.